Welcome back to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I am your host, Bronin. Thank you for joining the show. If this is your first time, 1,000 welcomes. Please make sure to like, subscribe, download, follow the Real Texas Radio Podcast from wherever you stream. And you can also follow the show on X at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. I've got a big show planned today. First, we're going to be talking about San Antonio and the mayor, Gina Ortiz Jones. Is she rivaling Lena Hidalgo, the county judge of Harris County, for the most unpopular, unlikable politician in the state of Texas? Quite possibly. We're going to talk about that. And then we will move it on over to Dallas. There was another big vote to explore alternative sites for City Hall. And it's like Groundhog Day all over again. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Let's go ahead and get into it. All right now, you're listening to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. I'm your host, Bronin, just a fed-up taxpayer bringing you all of your Texas, local, and national news. Okay, we are going to be kicking it off today on the show talking about San Antonio, Texas, particularly the mayor there, Mayor Gina Ortiz Jones. That's right, she's one of those three-name people, and she has been mired in all kinds of controversies over the last year. In fact, I believe she just marked her 1 year in office, and the biggest controversy is that she's lost 7 or 8 people in her office, top staffers, and it seems like she can't keep a chief of staff. She can't keep really any senior staff. And last year, I think back in the fall, she had a communications director or something who was in the role for 4 days. For 4 days. He started on a Monday, and he was gone by Thursday. And we're not getting any real reasons, at least from what I can see. I'm not plugged into San Antonio, but I haven't seen anything leak truly in the press from these staffers. Presumably, they've signed NDAs or some kind of contract to keep them quiet. But some of them are given the old, a family, work-life balance, and that the next part of my journey, and this was such a wonderful time working for Mayor Gina Ortiz Jones. So the San Antonio Express News, which is obviously a liberal, far-left Democrat newspaper, like every other newspaper just about left, they hate her. They hate her. And you know what? When I was just doing some background for this segment, I assumed that she was just a Hispanic woman, Ortiz, right? And and she's a Democrat. I had no idea that she has racked up DEI superlatives, the envy of many Democrats. In addition to being Latina, Hispanic, she's half Asian. She's got Filipino ancestry. One parent was Filipino, one is Hispanic. Then, turns out she's a lesbian. I had no idea that Gina Ortiz Jones was a lesbian.
And works for a gay CIA Fed.
And yeah, speaking of working for the feds, she was the undersecretary of the Air Force in the Biden administration for a couple of years.
Their pilot might be a transgendered witch.
And she's originally from Arlington, Virginia. So basically she's from D.C., and so she's a blow-in drifter from D.C., from the swamp, basically. And she's run for Congress a couple of times, including most recently against Tony Gonzalez, who is the Republican. He just had to drop out of the race for re-election because he also had many problems with staffers, including asking them for nudes and carrying on an affair with one of them who happened to be married with children, who ended up committing suicide by immolation and was discovered in her backyard, engulfed in flames by her mother. And so he's another person that had problems with staffers. But I digress. So back to Gina Ortiz Jones. So let's play a cut of her. This was last year. She was at, I think, a gay bar down in San Antonio, and she was given a speech to the LGBTQ community, and, well, just to see how they receive her.
You know I am with you on this issue. Why? And why is that? You know why? Because I am one of you. I know the moment in time that we are in. I know it is. Hey. Hold on now. You don't think the gay mayor has some thoughts on this? You don't think I have some things that I want to say about this? You're talking to somebody that served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I know the moment in time that we're in. I know this is not about safety. Please. Every time I have had an opportunity to step up for our community, I have. My own service under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, when I served as the number 2 over the Department of the Air Force, the way in which I tried to help make it a better opportunity for our trans brothers and sisters to serve.
Oh, just what we need. More opportunities for our trans brothers and sisters to serve in the Air Force.
Ooh, girl, you got female.
So that's Gina Ortiz Jones. And like I said, the local media, they hate her. They really hate her. And it's astounding. How bad do you have to be a Democrat, lesbian, 3-name person, blow-in drifter from out of the state? You have a domestic partner, same sex, a gal pal, and you've got you worked for the Biden administration, and you can't even get the local Democrat media to give you any good press. So she just hired somebody, some realtor who's, I guess, a TikTok expert, or he's got 5,000 followers on TikTok, according to this article I read. I'm not on TikTok. Is that a lot of followers? And he's got 10,000 on Instagram. And so apparently he's going to help her with her image problems, of which she has no shortage, including the fact that earlier this year, the city council, they actually censured her because apparently she yelled at one of the city council members. I don't think the city council cares for her at all. I don't cover the meetings, so I don't see the live tension, the atmosphere. But they voted 8-1 to publicly censure her. 8-1. So, I mean, talk about a landslide vote. And apparently anytime, well, you just heard her, that was one speech. That should have been a friendly crowd, the gay crowd. And she was lukewarmly, is that a word, received. She gave the state of the city address earlier this year. That might have been in April. There were a lot of businesses in attendance, business leaders. They aren't pleased with her either. I will add, you know, that the Spurs, they are going to be getting a new arena, and with help, a lot of help from the taxpayers. I think the Spurs have committed $500 million, and the taxpayers may be around the same. And the new arena did actually go to a vote. It wasn't a landslide win to fund the Spurs' new development, but I think it was like 53% of voters approved Prop B. Gina Ortiz Jones, she apparently, she didn't really come out and endorse the spending. She endorsed the question going before the voters and getting voter approval before the spending, but she didn't endorse the plan. So I guess that brings us to Dallas, which is also considering and blundering a lot of development. So let's go ahead and start talking about Dallas. So as you probably know by now, the city of Dallas, the council, last week on June 17th, they voted for 2 or 3 million bucks for the city manager to be able to conduct due diligence on exploring, I think, 4 different options for relocation sites for Dallas City Hall. And we knew how the vote was going to go, that it was going to be 9-6. In fact, it ended up officially being 9-5 because Adam Basildua, the 6th vote to stay in City Hall, he decided he was going to participate intermittently via Zoom and then not even cast a vote for the major vote, which I thought was just really weak and also very typical of him to just run out of the room or not be there for critical votes when he wants to save face. And some of the council, particularly Kara Mendelson, who's probably the most vocal champion for saving City Hall, she did try a number of tactics to delay, to embarrass, I think, to show the public some of the shadiness or perceived shadiness of the process. So I'll just go ahead and play one cut from Kara Mendelson. And I've got that queued up here.
What instructions were given to brokers, consultant staff, third parties regarding the search for potential sites?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Sustained.
Were any city-owned properties evaluated as alternatives, and if so, what were the findings?
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. Sustained.
Really? Not even to know if we looked at any city properties?
We're not going to disadvantage ourselves and how we go about assessing the market and telling everybody what we discuss in an executive session.
Well, you know what? It sounds like the executive session, some of these details about which buildings are finalists, they've already leaked. They're all over the local media. The Dallas Morning News has mentioned a few buildings. One of them, Bryan Tower, which is actually older than City Hall by a few years. It opened in the 1970s, is under consideration. That was leaked months ago. And of course, is anybody surprised to learn who the owner of Bryan Tower is, if you didn't already know? But Trammell Crow, the Crow family, the largest donors to the Dallas City Council, their favorite city councilors in terms of where they park their money are Bagman Chad West and Grinch Gay Donnell Willis, 2 of the staunchest champions for abandoning City Hall and relocating. So, of course, they've got to do their mega donor a solid and put one of his properties on the list for consideration. The Comerica Bank Tower used to be Momentum Tower when it opened in the 1980s. That's under consideration. This is according to the Dallas Morning News most recently. And then a third one, the Epic in Deep Ellum, which is downtown adjacent, and it's got a Dart stop. That's allegedly under consideration. And according to the CEO of the company that owns the Epic, a fairly new development, it's less than a decade old, they've already got renderings ready for new council chambers. They're ready to go. So just, why don't you pick them? Apparently Uber, I don't know if they're national, I don't know if they're still based in California, but they have a large presence in Dallas, and I believe that's where they are located, in the Deep Ellum building. In any case, this is a good reminder. If you are not following the Real Texas Radio podcast on X, please make sure to do so at RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. You can find me on Substack too. I publish a column now and again, bronin.substack.com. And if you're in one of those major streaming apps, please make sure to give the Real Texas Radio podcast a like, download those episodes, leave a comment if you like an episode. It really makes a big difference for an independent podcast. Okay, so we're talking about the cost, or we're talking about alternative sites for Dallas City Hall, and I don't want to relitigate all of the numbers, all of the reports, AECOM, staff estimates, and now the latest estimates again put costs in the $500 to $600 million range. Some of the counselors are still saying not accurate. I think an assistant city manager in Dallas. She thinks that the figures are very inflated, or she used to be over the facilities department. But, something that I was just thinking of, right? So we haven't been told what the cost of relocating would actually be. And what I mean by that is the cost to rent a site. And presumably that's going to happen, at least in the interim, at least for several years. The city would probably sign a 5 or 10-year lease if the city decides to relocate. And the costs, according to the ACOM report, of relocating are $100 to $112 million for a 5-year lease. Plus the fit out. So presumably all of the work that would need to be completed in order to accommodate the operations of City Hall, for example, council chambers space, could be anywhere from $13 million to $73 million. So at the high end of the ACOM figure is almost $200 million. Now, that does not include any potential costs the city would have to incur to demolish and haul away the existing city hall. And who knows how that deal might be structured, if a buyer would have to do that. I kind of doubt it. I see the taxpayers being on the hook for that. I was trying to figure out how much that would cost. I know the city has not procured an estimate for that yet. I looked at the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center demolition costs. It's been partially demoed, and I'm going to talk more about that as well, because that's also made some pretty negative headlines in the last week. But that facility, it's huge. It's been partially demoed. Dallas is getting a brand new convention center, and right now it's being used, what remains of it, as the FIFA Media Center, the World Cup Media Center. But I was just looking through AI, see what AI could dig up, and it pumped out a number, $11 or $12 million to demo that building, but it said it could be much higher, in the tens of millions of dollars. And the city, of course, they haven't broken out that figure. But my point is that this ACOM estimate, right, which I know many still question, and then the city went out and got another set of estimates which said the whole repair, modernization, upgrade, whatever, relocation, temporary, would be even more money. But the point is, if you believe ACOM, renting for 5 years, outfitting a new location to the Dallas City Hall specifications, and then potentially just demoing the existing site, that puts you over $200 million. And that's just 5 years worth of expense. So, again, I think when you put it in that kind of perspective, then it's harder to justify not putting $200 million into repairs. And, I actually think $200 million would get a lot of repairs done in that building. And I was looking at Candy's dirt. Candy Evans, she's a former city council candidate for District 11. She's a longtime reporter, a very dedicated, caring, concerned citizen in Dallas. She has a great website, candysdirt.com. And she was just putting all of the different reports together, synthesizing. This is an article back from earlier in 2026. And what she did was she had historical investment, continuous modernization going back to the 90s. But between 1997 and 2023, City Hall spent under $25 million in repairs, including elevator modernization, a roof replacement. That was in 1998. That was $800,000. They need a new roof. That'll be in the millions to replace, but we're talking like $5 million. Waterproofing and envelope phase 1, that was 2000. Okay, so we're going back 25 years now on some of this maintenance, $1.2 million. More recently, heating system replacement, $4.5 million. They just did that 3 years ago. Yeah, replacing the entire heating system 2 years before you consider exiting the building. That seems like quite an investment. More elevator systems upgrades. 2019, $1.5 million. 2018, $642,000. And from the 2017 bond, $7 million worth of repairs. So, it's really hard for me to think that there's not cabal conspiracy going on to get out of the building, and whether it's the Mavs or who knows. Anyway, this is another Dallas area developer I'm going to play. He's spoken several times on this issue publicly, Mike Todd, and he is actually, his last holding here in downtown Dallas actually was just foreclosed upon. I think it was a residential luxe redevelopment, and he had to hand it back over to the creditors or whatever, because it wasn't leasing out. He couldn't get tenants into the building. But this is him, if you want to hear a contrasting opinion to what you sometimes hear on this show.
The last 10 years, we've invested $1.5 billion into the core of downtown, repurposing over 30 buildings, including 2 functionally obsolete, decrepit, I-M-Pay buildings. The numbers that have been presented to you to update this property may seem shocking to many, but to those of us that are in the business, they're accurate. You've had consultants with tremendous integrity reviewing those numbers, and they're on spot. You have a chance to leverage the taxpayers' dollars into the core of downtown and bring vitality of several hundred city employees into the core of downtown and pick up a new facility, municipal facility, for a song. And the building owners will say, thank you. Downtown is on its deathbed. It needs an injection of life. None of you here are taking down City Hall. Pace, functionally obsolescent design, and years of neglect by others. None of you have done that for us, sadly. We're the largest preservation developer in the Southwest United States. We care about preservation. I'm thankful
That's
what
your
Councilman
time.
Marino and Ridley have done downtown. Please
That's
make
your
the
time.
So there you go. There's another opinion. I mean, he claims, Mike Todd, you would pick up a building for a song. I wouldn't characterize it that way. $25 million per year, over 5 years. I don't know if that's a song. And then you would go and buy it. So you would sink $100 million into a 5-year lease, and then you would spend how much to buy it? What, another $1 billion? I don't know. I don't trust this group on the whole. I don't trust government, period. I'm a government skeptic. And, a lot of the people who are in the we must abandon Dallas City Hall, I never hear them speaking on the budget. I never hear them asking any critical questions about budget. And, of course, they've all just jumped on the time to go train. So I guess my position is, if you're already going to spend $250 million, then reinvest it in the building that you have. And if you want to check out my last episode, which I recommend if you haven't listened to it, I pointed out, what the big problem is with the Central Business District, or there are multiple problems, but it's in a homeless zombie apocalypse. The jail, which is fortunately, it's going to be relocated, that's going to be years away. The highways that essentially entomb the Central Business District, some improvements, major improvements are being done. The I-30 Canyon drop project to basically sink that further below the surface, so that way the I-30 Canyon can be decked and connect the Cedars. Again, we're talking years away. And I know long-term planning, obviously, and then we're battling against the clock, but what is going to go there in place of City Hall? I just don't understand. Why all of the parking lots that surround it now, why aren't those developed? And we just haven't heard a plan, so I'm not inclined to just pick up and run without a plan. The Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center, I'll talk a little bit about that. It was supposed to be opened in 2029. It's partially demolished, and as I mentioned, toward the top of the segment, the FIFA World Cup Media Center is now there. And you know what? I've heard some of the city council say, well, we can't just repair City Hall while we have staff located in the building, and the air quality and all the hazardous materials, the asbestos. Oh. Well, do you know what? Why? Are you telling me there's no asbestos in the Kay Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center, which is the media hub for the FIFA World Cup, where I've seen the mayor, Eric Johnson, and city manager, Kim Tolbert, I've seen them in there getting photographed? Are they worried about the air quality? I didn't see them wearing any hazmat suits. Are all of the FIFA World Cup media staff, are they all wearing hazmat suits because of the potential for asbestos from the demolition of the other part of the building? Or is it so that the demolished part of the building has been completely closed off from the media center? Or is that possibly the case? In any event, the convention center, every single major city in Texas is building or remodeling their convention center, just about. I'm not sure about El Paso, but Austin, Houston, San Antonio, Dallas, I think even Fort Worth. We've all got convention center projects. I've heard in Austin that even with the convention center offline now, the hotel business is even stronger than when there are conventions in town, causing some on the Quality Arts and Life Culture Committee, whatever the equivalent is in Austin, to question why are we even having a convention center and putting all this money into something when the economy is actually improved without it. The hotel business and tourism industry is improved without the convention center. I've heard some different opinions in Dallas from some of the big restaurant owners who claim they do a lot of trade from the convention centers when they're in town. Look at the World Cup right now. And by the way, the convention center, I believe, is closed to the public. It's only the FIFA media staff who are allowed in there. And Dallas is booming. I know we've heard the hotel occupancy hasn't been as strong, but look at all the people downtown. If you've seen on social media, on X, flooding some of these pubs. Fort Worth is obviously getting a lot of the business too. The Fan Fest, I think, has reached capacity, at least for the Mexico game over in Fair Park. So there's plenty of economic activity. I've heard, I don't know the exact figure, but over about the course of the month, DFW is supposed to generate, I think, well over $1 billion. It could even be closer to $2 billion in economic activity just from the World Cup. So love to see it. And you know what? It seems like the tourists, a lot of foreign tourists, when they plan a U.S. trip, it's to New York City, it's to Hollywood, it's to Disney. And by exploring these other cities, and particularly the state of Texas, they're gaining a whole new appreciation for Texas. So I hope this is putting us really on the map for tourism. Obviously, business leaders, they are well acquainted with the atmosphere here in Texas, Texas being a destination. So in any case, the convention center, I got way off track, digressed, but now it's not supposed to open until 2030, maybe even 2031. Revised delay from 2029. The city is looking at redesigning the convention center. There is a huge controversy has broken out, potentially limiting access, vehicle access from Oak Cliff over the Jefferson Viaduct. I'm not even totally certain of all of those details. Originally, the convention center was supposed to be raised to be able to accommodate traffic beneath it, and that was going to be hundreds of millions of dollars. So that plan was scrapped, but that would have limited access to Oak Cliff. So now, of course, we got the DEI crowd isn't happy about that. What a mess. And the price tag is now somewhere in the neighborhood of $3.8 billion for this new convention center. $3.8 billion. And of course, it's getting an arena with it, because just what we need, another arena. I think I just saw that Grand Prairie is building another event space, some kind of sphere. I just saw that on Dallas, Texas TV. You know what, North Texas, we got to cool it. We have plenty of event spaces, and many of them, they can't even book. They can't book acts. They can't book concerts. They can't book events. So why don't we focus on the event spaces and the stadiums and the arenas and the theaters that we already have, and let's focus on filling those. We got plenty of them to go around. Frisco, Ford, Star Theater. I mean, all right, this is probably a good place to wrap up. Thank you for tuning in once again to the Real Texas Radio Podcast. There's going to be a big agenda on the City Council for this week. It's going to be the last meeting before they go to recess for the month of July, and if I can watch it, I will. I'm going to be on vacation this week. I'm traveling, but they are voting. I'll give you a quick preview, and I tweeted this out on X if you want to see it, RTR_Bronin, RTR_Bronin. City Council is going to be voting on hundreds of thousands of dollars for after-hours telephone support for lactating mothers. I am not making this up. This is not a joke. This is real. And they're also voting, while claiming that they're broke, and while they're about to go execute a lease on brand new office space and pay to have it outfitted for them. Totally broke, though. They're also going to be voting to remove millions of dollars from the tax rolls by way of at least 2 tax abatements, which they do on a regular basis, but they're broke. Oh, and one other thing, you know what? Talk about timing. Talk about making sure to unleash your bad news when you know that somebody else has got even worse news that the public is going to be consumed by. Cole Manor, the Charles Dilbeck, the famous architect. He's from Arkansas, I think, originally, but he has a ton of famous architecture around Dallas, Highland Park, Oak Cliff. Well, he designed a motel, I think, back in the 1940s. It basically turned into a crack, homeless, prostitution, sexual assault den. Foreign owners, and major nuisance property over on Harry Hines, over by Parkland Hospital. And it demolished, or the demolition began on Wednesday, the same day that Dallas City Hall voted to explore alternative sites. So it's been quite a year, 2026 for Dallas, quite a summer already. So I'm looking forward to a few days away from the news, and I'll be back next week. All right, I'm Bronin. This is the Real Texas Radio Podcast. Keep listening, keep tuning in. I'll catch you on the next episode.